All right, good afternoon, everyone. Glad that you can join us today. This is our third session of our WOW ERG training buffet today. And my name is Robert Scott, and I'm the president of WOW ERG, and also I oversee the technical training program at Valley Water. We're so glad that you're joining us today. We will ask that if you can, please put your job title and organization into the chat so that we can know who's in the room. And also, we want to invite you to raise questions and provide comments when it's appropriate. And we have some great presenters for us today. And so with us today, we have Sunny Williams, who will be presenting on the employee resource groups and women in water, and also with her is Victoria Garcia, and they'll introduce themselves and tell you more about themselves. But with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sunny and Victoria.
Great, thank you, Robert. Hope everyone has enjoyed the first two presentations for Training Buffet. I'm so glad that we're still doing this even online. Great opportunity for all of us. So Victoria and I are from Valley Water, Santa Clara Valley Water District, and we are two of the Women of Water Employee Resource Group board members. And we wanted to talk to you today just a little bit about the Women of Water ERG, how we got started, functions and goals, a little bit of logistics, just to share with you how the employee resource groups work at Valley Water, and hopefully that can help encourage some of you maybe to start a new women's ERG or expand on what you're already doing. And as Robert mentioned, we will have two pauses in the presentation for discussion and questions. And I also just wanted to let you know that there are a couple of text-heavy slides. They're not intended to be read. I'm not going to read them, but we wanted to make sure that you had that additional information that you can refer to later. You should have received a copy of the presentation. So just want to give you a little structure in how we'll be presenting today. But before we get started into too much detail, appreciate seeing people's names and where you're from in the chat. But we'd also like to ask a couple of poll questions real quick. Just that if your agency has employee resource groups or affinity groups, and if you do, if there's a women specific ERG or affinity group, and I see Contra Costa has one, but if Robert, you could bring up the poll.
Sure, I'm going to launch the poll, and it's going to be two questions here, as Sunny just said. And so if you can put your responses in there, we'll greatly appreciate it. I see responses coming in now. And also, if you haven't already, please put your organization and job title in the chat as well, so we can know who's in the room. All right, I see responses coming for both questions. Great. I'm gonna give that a little bit more time for everyone to respond.
And this will help us know what we should spend a little bit more time on in our presentation as well.
Yeah, we're going to put the presentation into the chat very shortly. I see a response, so you can follow along. Just give it another few seconds here for everyone to respond to the poll questions. I'll be closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And let's share the results here.
Great, so 2/3 of the public agencies here today do have an ERG or affinity group, but the majority do not have a women specific group. Okay, but 40% do have a women specific group, so that's awesome. Very cool. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll go through kind of what an ERG is, I think, because most of you know that. But an employee resource group or affinity group, and we're going to use those interchangeably today, is really just a space to be able to bring staff together that are part of a specific identity group. So that identity group can be educational background, can be an experience like veterans group, obviously gender, sexual orientation, anything that is an affinity group of some sort can become an ERG, obviously depending upon how your agency defines that and supports that. But really the important part of the ERGs is to be able to bring people together for a shared vision, right? So you don't have to be a woman to be a part of the Women of Water ERG. You don't need to be gay to be a part of the LGBT group. And I think it's really important when you're looking at what ERGs you want to be a part of, or when you're creating an ERG, is to really make that clear to the other employees, is that ERGs are for everyone who support that vision, which is hopefully all of us, so that we all can support each other. And I feel, and I don't know if this is how true this is, but it seems in my opinion that when you have people not a part of that affinity group, that it may provide some validity to people outside. So I think if you look at history, that it really increases the support and the concern when everybody can come together and say that, yes, we need to support the veterans, we need to support women, we need to support a particular race or culture. And if you're not a part of that, I think that just pulls people together and really shows how much we need to support one another. So when you're moving forward and looking at ERGs, just keep that in mind, that allies are a critical part of any group, and an ERG should be open to anyone that shares that vision. So someone once asked me, well, how many ERGs are at Valley Water? We have 12 different employee resource groups. 4 of them or 5 of them have all started in the past 5 or so years. So it's really been exciting to see how the employees of Valley Water are looking at expanding the ERGs and seeing the value that ERGs can provide, not only to staff, but also to the agency. And we'll talk about that later. We also have a nonprofit group at Valley Water, and that's the Association of Women Employees. And we'll talk about that as well, why we still started a women's employee resource group, even though we do have a women's nonprofit group at the agency as well. And so next, I will hand it off for Victoria to really talk about how was WOW created.
Thank you, Sunny. So first of all, my full-time job at Valley Water is an associate water resources specialist in groundwater management. And as Sunny mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of how the first women's professional network came about at Valley Water. So it really all started in 2017 when the Me Too movement was kind of gaining momentum again. And what I really want to emphasize about this is that in retrospect, I think this movement really helped impart courage in women to speak up about issues that they were facing, both inside and outside of the workplace. And in our organization, there were women who were more outspoken about the gender bias that they were experiencing in the workplace. So during this time, I was serving as the president of a different ERG, the Organization for Latino Affairs. And I noticed during this time that a lot of my coworkers, women coworkers, were coming to me and talking to me about, their experiences in gender bias at the workplace. For example, during meetings, they felt like they were being overspoken by not only men, but also women, in management positions. And then others were talking about, there are opportunities for promoting to leadership roles that they felt they were being looked over by their male counterparts, who were and felt that they were equally qualified for those positions. I myself have experienced gender bias. One example was when I was at a work group meeting, and one of my male coworkers made a comment about my appearance that made me very uncomfortable. And, initially I didn't really know how to react. So all of these things happening together, I thought to myself, women in this organization really need support. We need a safe space where we can talk freely about these experiences and also work together to address it. And we needed an opportunity to network, to learn from each other. We needed an opportunity to support each other and to help each other grow professionally, to learn new skills. And this vision essentially became our mission statement, later on as the ERG was formed. So in early 2018, I kind of recruited some coworkers to help me lead a group and start the ERG chartering process to form this women's professional network. Next slide, please. So for the chartering process, all ERGs need to be approved by a chartering process. Sunny showed all the ERGs that we have at our agency. And the chartering process begins by drafting a proposal form, and then you meet with your diversity program administrator to determine whether or not it's acceptable. So the charter proposal, part of that, you have to include a mission statement, you have to include objectives. You also have to write up your bylaws, which essentially are laws that our ERG follows, and pursue executive sponsors. So in this case, we thought it was important to have 2 executive sponsors, not just one, but have a female and a male executive sponsor. And we knew that bringing a male sponsor and membership really would help empower our goals, but also provide a male perspective. So finally, the proposal needs to be approved by our district council, and then our budget is assigned, which is a pre-adopted budget by Valley Water's board of directors. So finally, in 2018, we formed the Women of Water ERG or ERG, and it was formally adopted. Our executive sponsor submitted a board memo to our board of directors to introduce us. So we spoke at our board meeting and let them know who we were. And the logo and name of our ERG, I guess similar to some of the other ones that are existing now, developed from Women's Professional Network to Women of Water, so WOW. And we did this because we wanted to incorporate the water aspect of what our agency does. And you may notice that our logo does remind you of some superhero that may come to mind, and that was not a coincidence. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of challenges that we faced while forming our ERG. And one of the challenges was clarifying our role within the existing nonprofit organization that Sunny mentioned earlier. So during the chartering process, the nonprofit organization did feel that our group might conflict with their group, since obviously it's also a women's organization. And one of the things that I should point out that Sunny pointed out is the main difference is that this nonprofit organization did not want to pursue being an ERG, but instead wanted to be recognized as a nonprofit to potentially allow for more political freedom if that's the path that they chose to follow. So that was the main difference between the two organizations. There were some other minor differences as far as, what we wanted to celebrate or bring to light. And then, but there were some overlapping objectives. So what I did was, myself and the team, we first met with management who was familiar with this group and tried to better understand the history of this group and their objectives. And we had various meetings with this organization to try to understand, where we were overlapping and what our overall mission was for the group. And so what we determined was that we could work together. Ultimately, turned around the situation, decided to work together to support each other and, ultimately support women in the organization. So what we did is we agreed to have the Association of Women Employees listed as a sister organization to WOW in our bylaws and, work together. The second challenge that I wanted to talk about was forming an ERG leadership board. So initially I had reached out to various contacts who I thought, would share the same vision as me or, be as motivated and as passionate I was about this subject, but, that wasn't the case. So the key, and for many reasons, right? Either they weren't interested or, they didn't have the bandwidth to kind of take this on. So the key here was just really not to give up and keep recruiting people who shared, your same passion and goals. Next slide, please. So we held our inauguration event in 2019, where we essentially presented the WOW board and executive sponsors to the organization. And this is where we had our first membership sign up, right? So all our attendees, most of them chose to sign up to be members. And we held brainstorming groups. So this picture kind of shows our brainstorming groups where we discuss topics like, what do you want, what would members want to have addressed? What kind of topics do they want to see addressed? What does professional development and networking look like? What are the best ways to discuss these topics? Is it through brown bags? Is it through panels or speaker series? And so we had a huge successful event. Well, I wouldn't say huge, but we had over 75 attendees and came up with about 55 brainstorming ideas that we could get started on, right away. And so this helped us jumpstart our organization. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share with you just a few of the topics that we discussed. Some of them are listed here amongst other of the brainstorming ideas. So, equal pay, hiring, Me Too issues, work-life balance, district policies, and others. And so I'm not going to go over all of them, but I did want to share a few ideas that were discussed during this inauguration event. Next slide, please. So some of the initial actions that we took, I'm just going to talk about a couple, two here. The first one was preparing for our 2020 Women's Business Day event that was coming up pretty soon. And so we held a district-wide online training event, and it was called Diversity Uncovered, and it was put on by a group called Circle Up. And the training covered not only just gender bias, but also other biases like race and sexual orientation. And the training was really aimed to build awareness of unconscious bias that were received by women in the workplace and how to address it, right? What do we do? What is our action going to be when this happens to us? And it was a huge success, such a great success that Circle Up was actually contracted to do a diversity training for all managers and supervisors. So this kind of brown bag event that we had put together became a required training. And it really just showed, how important this was to management by taking this action and showing that this was an important topic. And it didn't stop there, because soon after that, it became an all employee required training, and it continues to be so till this day. So great improvement on kind of bringing up, some of the issues that were encountered initially. Secondly, we started a Lean In Circle. So I'm not sure if you know about the Lean In Circle environment, but it's an online global network, and it's formed of, small circles. And the goal is to help women achieve their ambitions. Right now, there's more than 35,000 circles globally, over 160 countries. So it's a huge online resource. If this is something that you're looking for, circles, the goal is essentially to have a safe space to share your struggles, to give and get advice, learn new skills, and really just celebrate, each other's wins and support each other. So for WOW, we decided to do the Lean In Circle quarterly, and then, the Lean In Circle meetup can look different each time. Some of the ones that we've done in the past are more of an educational brown bag. So the very first one we did was learning how to network and learning new networking skills. And then the more casual meetups that we do are, just really just meeting up casually, either through lunch or walks, and informally learning from one another. Next slide, please. So with that, we're going to stop here and just have a brief Q&A session on any of the things that we've discussed so far. Sunny's going to go into more detail about what our current WOW board looks like and our current structure, current events, and as she mentioned, more ERG logistics. So if you'd like, you can use the raise your hand feature. We're just going to designate maybe like 5 minutes to this, and or put it in the chat, and I'll go ahead and monitor that along with, some of our BayWork hosts. So any questions at all? Sunny and I are here to answer. Or comments. Okay, so we have a question from is it Alejandra? I can't see. Let me see.
Yes.
Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, I just have a quick question. I'm from Alameda County Water, and we just recently started our DEI program, and we've talked a lot about ERGs in general, and I know that's part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion district-wide work plan, but we faced a few roadblocks, and some of those include, how do we ensure that this doesn't cause more separation than inclusion? How do we navigate through those challenges where, we get folks who are really engaged and want to lead some of these ERGs, but then, other folks that maybe just don't have capacity would also like to be a part of it, but they just feel like, they can't start an ERG for a group that represents them. Then we've kind of been on the fence about, well, we want to make sure that they're included. But again, there's this whole discussion about how do we make sure that we can create and support all of the ERGs without excluding any one or multiple groups. Do you guys have any guidance on how you navigate through those challenges, or if maybe you've encountered some of that at Valley Water?
Yeah, Sunny, do you want to take this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can start that. I think one thing, at least I've been at Valley Water for 15 years, so I'll not sure what happened in year 18, but in the last 15 years, the individual ERGs have all been started by staff. They're not started by our diversity program. And so I think that gives a little bit of buffer, because the agency isn't looking at it as we have to have a minimum of these 7 ERGs or we don't have a D&I program, right? It's really the impetus from staff that are coming forward and saying, we'd like to put this sort of an ERG or affinity group together, and then you go through the channels. So I think that's provided a little bit of that buffer, just to say, if there are staff interested in creating this sort of a group, then get that staff together and, the D&I program can support it. But it's not D&I's role to ensure that specific ERGs exist and have the staff within them. It really is kind of that, literally that grassroots organization, that staff is the driver and the impetus for the ERGs. And if staff don't have the bandwidth, then unfortunately, then that ERG's not there, but it's not the responsibility of the D&I program to create them.
Yeah, and if I could add to that just a little bit, one thing that I'm not sure if is mentioned yet or not, but most of the events that are put on by the ERGs are for everyone. I mean, every single employee is invited. It's not just for that specific ERG. So that event that we put on for unconscious bias initially was sent out to every single employee. And I think that helps, motivate the situation. But one other thing I wanted to mention was that the D&I program does put on once a year an event called Taste of Inclusion. And it's an event where any group, it doesn't have to be an ERG, can put together, a table or a booth that really expresses, their group, right? If it's just a couple of people, it doesn't have to be a formal ERG. And they want to express their culture or, just whatever it is that group identifies with. And that really helps bring, that culture to light for everyone who attends, because it's a very well attended event. It's like an all employee event. And sometimes those groups decide to form an ERG, later on, because they enjoy it and they really like sharing their culture with others. So I would just go ahead and add that part too, or the D&I program is putting on kind of this one-time event where really any group can participate and showcase, what they want to show. So there's another question in here about how does WOW define membership? Sunny, I think you are going to discuss membership later in the top.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to skip that one. And then how did you help your ERG leadership, particularly if they are new to the role, navigate I can't read, navigate bylaws and formal policies? So really, I think the D&I program helped establish a lot of these things, and they have a leadership training. I think this is kind of new now, where if you want to be an ERG leader, there's this brief training that you can go through. There's a toolkit. And then what we also like to do is those who are more seasoned in the ERG leadership can have a transitional period, right? Where this new board is coming, on board for their term, and the outgoing board can really share their experiences and kind of give them a brief training on what the rules are, right, or policies that are involved in leading an ERG. So a lot of great questions. What is the closest equivalent of an ERG for several organizations? Circles. Maybe you can expand on that question.
Oh, I'll take a shot at the answer. I think if several organizations, you mean like in this case, agencies, and you can unmute or clarify too, is the Lean and Circle can certainly do that, but we're also doing that right here with Bayworks, right? And Bayworks has a women in trades group as well. And we had mentoring program in June. And so I think, just from our local standpoint, I think this is the beginning of us being able to start connecting across the agencies, and Bay Work is participating agencies. You know, that's a venue where we can reach across and, you know, connect across agencies. So if there's, please clarify if we haven't answered.
And I just added a link to the Bay Work Women in Water page on the website, so you can get a sense of what that group is doing. And that's basically Bay Works ERG for women in water.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So there's just one more question, and then we'll continue on with our presentation. We also do have some time set aside at the end of the presentation for some more Q&A. So great question. Thank you so much. The next question is, have you encountered some pushback from middle management, not upper management, when creating the ERGs or rolling out D&I programs? So I maybe I'll start on this one really quickly, but D&I, and Sunny might cover this later too, is really encouraged. It's a part of our work plan. Essentially, every year, every employee is designated, you know, some hours, and essentially has to comply with this D&I work plan goal, right? Is to participate in an event, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an ERG event. You know, it can be like an all-employee meeting or something on a committee. And so middle management to me might be like my unit manager, right? Like I'm my unit, and then my manager above me, I think would be considered middle management. So I think they're well rehearsed on that. This is essentially a work plan goal for everyone. Sunny, maybe you want to add something really quickly, and then we'll continue and get to more questions at the end.
No, I think that's the main thing is it's relatively recent that it's a requirement on all staff work plans that you meet at the D&I. So I think that's a big shift that the agency has taken to support diversity and inclusion work. All right, so we are going to keep going in the presentation, but please continue to add questions into the chat, or just make a note for yourself and ask them later, because we that is a big part of what we want to do here today is have an open dialogue. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about Women of Water, and as we mentioned earlier, just a little bit of logistics to give you a sense of what we're doing and how it works. In order for us to have 10 minutes of questions at the end, that means I have 5 minutes now. So I'm going to do this really fast, but these are the more text heavy slides. And so you can look at those at your leisure and refer to them later. So there are 4 of us on the board. And again, we all just happen to be women because that's who was nominated and elected. And we do have 1 vacant position. And as Victoria mentioned, the challenge not only of having staff to create an ERG, but also staff to maintain. So again, D&I program staff aren't going to staff an ERG. So it's all employees. And we've had to limit some of our activities at times when we haven't been a full board, and that's just something that we all have to manage with the bandwidth that we have. And we talked about our executive sponsors. We do have 1 female and 1 male to help bring in both of those perspectives. So we've already kind of talked about the mission. Again, I'm going to fly through these due to time. Identified objectives as part of the chartering process of how we can support our staff and partnering with the Association of Women Employees. Just a little bit about event types that came out of that inaugural event that Victoria mentioned. American Business Women's Day this year was September 22nd. And so we like to have at least 1 big ERG event a year, and all of the ERGs do that. There's usually, you know, one major event that everyone hosts, and then some smaller events. that has included being able to do some presentations to our monthly all employees town hall events, some smaller, what we call walk on the wild side events, but really what we try to focus on, particularly on the Valley Water wide all employees meetings, is that it's educational and fun, right? We want to be able to educate people. How can we all better support women in the workplace? Not talking over one another, or if someone does talk over someone else can come in, male or female, and say, oh, hey, but I really want to reiterate what Victoria said earlier, because I think that's really important, right? There's things we can all do in meetings that can help each other. And to make it fun so that people want to come together. The picture on the top left was the International Women's Day focus this year was break the bias, and they used the arm crossing to represent breaking the bias. And so we had staff put together pictures, and this is obviously a Zoom meeting where we did the symbol. And then we put together a video collage and presented that in one of the monthly all employee meetings. So it was a great way to be able to share that information to all the employees in the town hall meeting. The two other pictures are walk on the wild side, and something we heard from our membership, particularly as we started coming back into the office from the global pandemic shutdown, is staff wanted to just talk to each other. Most ERGs had regular monthly meetings, and staff said, instead of regular meetings, can we just talk? Can we get to know each other? Can we have that safe space? And so we have now monthly walks. As you can see, we have a percolation pond on our main campus, which at times has water. And when we take our morning break, we just time it together, and whoever wants to join, we just walk and get to know each other. So really the events change and can be whatever your group wants from year to year, right? It's just meeting the needs of what the employees are looking for. We also partner with external groups. In 2019, the Society of Women Engineers from San Jose State University, we partnered with them on a STEM workshop for high school girls, and just a way, again, to support the community and to be able to bring more women into the science, technology, engineering, mathematics fields, right? So that was our way that we could partner with San Jose State and help bring people into the community. So it's 1:40. Get ready, hold on. We're just gonna fly. So there's a lot of benefits that ERGs can provide. Victoria already talked about the training that came in just as our initial kind of WOW event, that then went to management, supervisors, and now is required by all employees on an annual basis. So a huge shift for us in what ERGs can do. The other thing that our ERG has done is, you may have seen, if you're in Santa Clara County, you may have seen our water ad campaigns, right? We're in another drought. We have staff that work on public information and marketing and have all that training that we don't. But one thing that ERGs have are different perspectives and different lenses. And so WOW and our Pride ERG, and then subsequently all the other ERGs, looked at the initial water campaign ads, and we said, it seems like all of the women are doing this sort of thing, and all of the men are doing this sort of thing. Can we mix it up a little bit? And the marketing people thought, oh, I didn't realize, I didn't think of that, right? No one's doing anything to try to not bring people up, but it's that lens and that it's that different perspective. And so as a result of the ERGs coming in and working with our public information staff, we revised the water ad campaign that you now see countywide. So really important aspect that ERGs can provide. So we talked about the campaign. We talked about the training. I also wanted to mention the green team, which is also relatively new, bought reusable dishes. And now when we have other ERG events, or even when we had a all employee meeting, we have 800 plus employees, we use the green team dishes. So it's been this great thing, again, that came from the employees, that came from the ERG, that said, we shouldn't be using disposable materials at our events. We should be using dishes that we can reuse. We brought in a dishwasher to one of our buildings, and we take the dishes home in some cases, and then we reuse them. So it's been a great thing for that, how ERGs can change the daily interactions of how your agency functions. So I'm going to skip all of the roles. You have the PowerPoint. Please do look at that, because it is important how you function in the organization. We do have some hours allocated as leaders. Doesn't necessarily cover all of the time, but it's something. We have 2-year terms. Again, something else you can decide that's written in your bylaws, how often that would be. And as we mentioned earlier, we do have a budget that comes from Valley Water's budget. There is a ready department unit that helps support us. They really focus on the process piece. We already talked about earlier that they don't create ERGs, and they're not leaders of ERGs, but they are there to help with kind of the process, the forms, the budget. We can talk about challenges, but really I want to go to the next spot and again, have that open discussion and question and hear from you all what we can offer to you. We're here to to help share our information with you. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll go back to some of the challenges, but let's just leave the remainder of the time of open discussion. So
Sunny,
put it in the chat. Yep.
Can you address the membership question that was asked earlier?
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, because we flew through some things. So membership is open to anyone. So we've mentioned that. Please make sure you communicate that allies are important. You don't have to be a woman to be in the women's group. Bring in everybody into your ERG. We also, and so membership is just a regular agency employee. Are members. Members have voting rights, for example, when we have elections. Our temporary staff can also participate in ERGs, but if there's an election, they just can't vote. So anyone can participate at any level. It's just that membership are regular employees and you can vote. We also do not have dues in our ERGs. I know other public agency ERGs do have dues. We don't. So again, that's something really that you want to work within your organization, and particularly with your legal department, since we are public agencies. But membership is open to everyone.
Any questions, anyone, or comments? I had a question. Does the budgeted amount seem to be enough to do what you guys like to do?
It allows us to do what we do. Like Victoria, I've been a board member on other ERGs as well, and there's certainly times when we have wanted to do a larger event where the cost of the speaker plus if a gift to the speakers, and if we're doing this or providing other materials to staff can exceed that. And at times we've talked amongst the board that, oh, well, should we each just pitch in $20 or something so that we can pay for a speaker? But for most cases, the amount covers what we work within that budget like you do with any project, right? We have this much budget, and so what can we provide in that? We do also buy swag. You know, staff like swag, and the ERGs have all come up with some really interesting swag of, there's lots of different mugs, different lunch boxes. We've had, the WOW has had a cooler lunch box. You know, it's insulated and it's larger than a regular lunch box. So having, we use part of that budget for swag, and all of the ERGs have different swag that staff seem to really like. And then you're spreading your message, right? You're showing that you support the goals of the different ERGs, and that's always really fun to see.
Yeah,
because it creates a safe space. Yeah.
I was just going to add to that some ERGs are more active than others, right? So a lot of times what we'll do, if we like, for example, our ERG is one of the more active ones, we'll partner with other ERGs that aren't as active and might have, you know, a lot more budget, or we can split the budget. I think for the diversity and inclusion training that I had talked about earlier, we partnered with, I think, 3 other ERGs because it was costly. And so, you know, we wanted to bring that to the table. And I see there's another question about budget. How is participation in the ERG or ERGs event charged? Is staff time coded to D&I budget? So we do have a D&I budget, which is used mostly by the ERG leaders. As Sunny mentioned, we have 30 hours. We used to have an ERG time code that all staff would charge to, like, let's say WOW is holding an event, and you know, you're just an employee, or no, you don't belong to any ERG. You go to that event, you're still complying with your D&I work plan goal, and we used to have a designated code for that, but now it's just kind of just your general code, whatever you use for your regular work hours is used to attend those events for regular staff. So it has changed over the years, but currently there's both, and it depends if you're a leader or not a leader.
I was just going to do a nexus into the next question too, is that's why many of the ERG events, not just ours, but most of them occur between 12 and 1, is so that people are using part of their lunchtime. So even if you usually take a 30-minute lunch and the event is an hour, you use 30 minutes of your lunchtime and then 30 minutes to charge to your home project as part of your work plan D&I. But that does mean it is difficult for field staff, and all of the ERGs have talked about ways to try to bring in more field staff. And I will say that since with the pandemic shutdown and us converting to online meetings, that has facilitated some field staff to participate. So when we've, you know, that's kind of been a benefit, that we've now all become a little bit more comfortable with these online events. But it's still a challenge. We do try to have more interactive events. And since it is now a work plan requirement, that is one way that facilitates field staff being able to say, well, to meet my work plan, I need to at least attend one. But it's still a challenge. And it's common. And just to address the earlier question about if there's kind of conflict or competition between the ERGs, usually it's all of the ERGs who meet together that have common challenges within our own ERGs. And so we usually aren't having differences between each other. It's usually all of the ERGs together saying, how can we get more field staff to all of our events? And so there may be questions that the ERGs want that we have to the D&I program, but usually the ERGs come together pretty well, so we don't have that conflict. And I know we're at 152. Robert, sorry.
That's okay. No, you're doing great. Great presentation. Any other questions or comments that anyone want to share before we leave? You can just raise your hand and we can call on you too. We have just a couple more minutes.
And Victoria and I are open to questions later. So you have our email addresses. If you want to connect or have a meeting later, please feel free to email us, and we're happy to, again, help where we can in all of our process.
Any comment or question, anyone? Well, we see some hand praises and claps for you guys, and thank yous for the great presentation. Sunny and Victoria, this was wonderful. We sorry to rush you through and everything, but this was a great presentation. We thank you guys for participating in this, and we hope to continue to support women, and particularly our women in trades as well. You guys have played a major role in our women in trades, and participating in events is there well. So last call for any comment or question before we end our session today. Sunny, Victoria, any final thoughts?
I just want to say thank you to everyone, and maybe you don't have any questions or comments now, but Robert did include a link to the survey, so we'd love to see your comments there. And thank you so much for your support, and we encourage you to move forward and to follow your passions.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Just are from the organizations that you've started, have any of your experiences been specialized experience in diversity, or what is your background in terms of before, for the people that were like founding these ERGs or the diversity, the DEI groups?
Like our educational background?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, Sunny, do you want to? Sounds like
not D&I is the main answer, right?
Yeah.
So Victoria works in groundwater, associate water resource specialist. I'm an environmental planner. We all have, we were all hired by Valley Water to do other jobs, right? So the ERG is a volunteer role. We can build time, but we're all just adding on to our regular workload. The D&I program, or currently now our READY program, that's the only staff that have been hired for D&I. The rest of us, this is just an added thing we add to our regular work. So it crosses, the ERG members cross all classifications at the district: admin, scientific, technical, field staff, which it is harder for them, certainly, but it's all classifications become ERG leaders. And we don't have D&I background. That's why we get support from our READY unit.
And just to reiterate, it's important to, as Sunny is saying, the ERGs is all staff driven. It's decisions that the staff decide they want to have this group. Our READY or our D&I program is totally different, though they are involved. They have their own other mission. The ERG is driven at the grassroots, at staff level, for the staff to feel, find a place, a group where they feel they can be heard and address some of their concerns as staff. All right, Sunny, any final comments? I know Victoria gave some. Anything you want to say before we close?
Yeah, I just continue to participate. Being a part of an ERG has helped me make connections I wouldn't have otherwise made. This was a story I was going to tell. I skipped through that. Later during a project, someone says, "Oh, contact so-and-so," and I already knew them from the ERG. So it really did even help my work at Valley Water, because the ERGs cross the organization, and really you meet people that you wouldn't normally work with because of your role at Valley Water. And so that has just been a really nice support and ability to cross units that you wouldn't already normally do. So be a part of an ERG. If you're motivated, get with some other folks and also start an ERG. But there's challenges, and you can do it.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Sunny and Victoria. This was great. And they their contact information is available. We posted the presentation into the chat, as well as there's a survey link there that we would love to hear from you guys. So please complete it. We will send the survey out also via email to everyone who attended today. But thanks again. Hopefully you'll join some other presentations of our training buffet. There's one right after this at 2 o'clock, and then we'll have 4 tomorrow and 4 on Thursday. So pick one. All you can train. And we hope to see you guys really soon. Have a great rest of your day, and you have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.